we turn off ours?
We're here tonight to do the State of the City. This is a snapshot of where I believe we are at this time. It's been a while since we've had one that's been public. We have one that's lost somewhere in the computer from times before. We cannot talk about the state of the city without first acknowledging that we had a rather lengthy period that was not recorded, but the beginning of COVID-19. In the year 2022, COVID-19, the effects of COVID-19 began to wear off. People learned to adjust, medical treatment was available, and there was a return to a new normalcy. To mask or not to mask became the avenue of choice. There was a definite change in attitude about work, and that will be a theme throughout this presentation. To begin with, Tim Content is our safety officer, and he's documented the entire 3 years of the COVID episode. He was responsible for ordering a lot of the materials and chasing them down and getting them to employees. As you all recall, that we called all of our employees essential workers, that we needed to have them. The heart, I think, of a good city comes from the people who get elected, and it comes from the people who work for you. We're constantly striving to try and upgrade with folks in terms of training. Tim's job was to establish sessions where our employees could get the CPR or the AED, and first aid. Beyond that, he went way beyond that in setting up chances for people to increase their knowledge through instruction here and being able to move up the salary schedule because of that. With the negotiations that we had this past year, and the bulk of the negotiations were done in 2022. One of the things that came out of that, and that happened really before we started the negotiations, there is a committee of a few administrators and employees that looks at the medical program that we have and makes suggestions as to what they'd like to see have happen. Then we take that into the negotiations. It becomes a part of that as a destination. The wellness program is what they were looking for. It's voluntary. It was negotiated for this labor contract for 2023 to 2025. People should be in the process of, employees, of signing up through that, through the medical insurance that we have available to us. How is wellness important to all of us is the fact that the reason we get such good carryovers quite often so that we have the reserves at the end of the year is because of the demands on our self-insured portion of the medical mutual agreement is small. At one point, and it was not this past year, but the one before, there was, I'm sorry, that goes back to 2020. Well, now I've lost my train of thought here. With we got such, they cut our of amount of money that we had to pay for health insurance. We actually got a cut. And part of the negotiations that year was to give back, since the employees are directly responsible for our ability to do that, we cut back their share of the medical mutual that they pay. When they came in to negotiate, of course, that was on their list of things to do. They all had recommendations for us. But he said, yeah, we can do that if you want, but do you want to look at what we were going to offer? And they threw theirs away at that point in time because we took it down to about 11.5%. And it was graduated to go back up. We're currently at 13, and we've been able to stay steady at 13 in our negotiations, 13% of that. But it's only able to do that because we're not spending exorbitant amounts of money on the health care, but we are interested in keeping our workers healthy. So this wellness program that is going on at this time will allow them, if they sign up and go through the whole program, they will not have to pay the December fee for that. There are going to be some abrupt changes as I do this because I'm trying to keep this to a half an hour, and I'm probably already 15 minutes into it. The safety forces, we finally got them back up to the levels that they were at prior to the financial problems that we had. The police department has 18 people on patrol. 2 full-time detectives, 1 part-time detective, 5 sergeants, and a school resource officer, a captain, and Chief Jeff Wallace, as well as an administrative assistant, which was an added. They originally had one, and we did put it back with that. And they also have a large canine crew that's working for us. We have 3 dogs, 1 therapy dog that they take around for people that it helps kind of settle them down. The dog's very polite and a very good dog for this. They have 2 police full-service dogs, which can apprehend, detect drugs, the whole gamut. They are trained for that. These have come in very handy. People usually don't want to deal with a dog, and they don't have to do anything, just have a presence when they're there with that. The total calls for the police department this year was 17,659. These are thefts, traffic accidents, domestic-related calls, those sorts of things. There were 804 citations, 242 felony arrests, 761 misdemeanor arrests. Drug abuse and overdose continue to be a problem. We had 9 deaths in this past month this past year from drug overdoses. The dispatch department is 10 full-time dispatchers and 1 coordinator, which is a new appointment. Once again, we're trying to help out where we can when we can afford it. They had 22,733 calls, and we have 9 different districts that we are doing dispatch for. Fire department has 18 paramedics, 1 full-time fire inspector, 1 chief, and 1 administrative assistant. The calls, 3,169, and 80% of these are emergency medical services. Now, our negotiations, as I talked about them earlier, they ran over into this year. basically because the fire department did ask us if they could have a late start on theirs because we had openings in the fire department in the administrative area, and the folks wanted the time to study for the test, so they asked if we would go late with that, and we said we don't have a problem with that. Most of our negotiations were over by December 31st. The fire really didn't start in earnest negotiating until about that time. It really started a little earlier in December with that. Let's see. I have to point out Chief Chappell. Mark did some long-term acting fire chief for us, and he did it many years ago for a while when he was a young man. Not that he's that old now, but he also was well over a year as an interim fire chief for us. He has served well, and when the testing was all done and clear, he was named the permanent fire chief for this. There was a civil service test they had to study for. There can be written, and also there's the interview part of that, which is very intense with that. The as far as economic development goes, probably our golden boy of that field is Dennis West. Dennis is here tonight. Dennis put together, and we'll end up, he probably already has this online, but he put together this document, which is an evaluation of Ravenna, the Ravenna business community with snapshots, and it's supported by statistics, and it's a nice read, and I want to point that out. But the economic development that I want to talk about tonight, there are different ways you can have economic development. Part of it is when you're helping people that need help, and we do that with grants. One example of that is the CDBG grants. They're joint ventures between Streetsboro, Portage County, and the city of Ravenna. People with low to moderate income are available to make applications, and the applications can be for home repairs, water heater, furnace, that sort of thing, or it could be a complete remodeling with set limits, and I believe they're over about 50,000 now on that limit with that. We do the handling of the money for this group through NDS. Our finance department handles that particular grant. One of the things that we accomplished, again with grant money, was the purchase of the old high school property. That was $315,000. We were able to, when we originally applied for a grant, it was for 218, the building that we tore down. The building itself, we were not able to use the grant money for that. It did not support a demolition. But the person in Columbus suggested, because we were going to pay cash for the high school, they suggested, but we can do the high school. So we switched. And the purchase of the high school was by a grant with the help of NDS putting that together. They also worked on the, it actually belongs to them, the site at 218 with that. Um, the big thing with us this past year, of course, has been the LG Chem project. It took a lot of work to get them to come here, and but it's turned out to be a very good thing. We got, once again, we got a lot of grant money. We had to put a new road in, Ray Ann Parkway. The grants on that were over $700,000, and we were in a place where that, with some money, other money we set aside, we would be all right with that. But as luck would have it, inflation set in, and it went up faster than our grant money with that. So we had to make up a little bit of a shuffling of funds to get the roadway done. It's got a little bit that needs to be done with it yet, but the road is in and the grant money is coming in with that. If you think back to when that plant was closed and that area was pretty dead, they were still doing business down by Route 14, but it was basically a warehouse down there. The most viable business in the area was West Rock, which was on Freedom Street. Ray Harner and Ann deserve a lot of credit for helping our economic development in that area. If you go up there now and look at how they have remodeled the old GE building, and they have a number of businesses inside of that building. They have ACE Incorporated, is Eric Sharp. I just wrote, well, Dennis wrote it, and I signed it, letter of recommendation for Eric. He's to get a grant to continue his work on a substance that tires emit when they're out on the road. And apparently this is a hazardous waste. I never knew about that until we did this letter. But Eric has developed a way to fasten that so that it doesn't come off. And I think that this gentleman, he's one of our biggest cheerleaders in getting people to look at us as a place to come for economic development. And we're certainly willing to help Eric do anything he can do, but he just had to have more space. He's consuming quite a bit. We have Great Lakes Etching in the bottom floor, and they make, just as it says, etchings for doors, windows, those sorts of things. They sell them to places like the Empire State Building and those sorts of things. Those are being made there with that. Of course, LG Chem is going along so fast. They needed space for their workers, the white-collar workers that are overseeing the project, and they also have a large portion of that building's complex. In addition to that, we have Wagner Logistics, and Wagner Logistics hauls boxes for West Rock. Now, West Rock also uses the railroad, and you'll recall that we also helped run a spur up to the GE building, and there's a transloading site there that is finally, with the road in, they're looking for someone to take that and get that working also. So this went from an empty building just sitting there into all of this kind of growth, and a lot to do with Ray and Ann and his steadfastness on following through on stuff. West Rock, which is on Freedom Street, Dennis was out to see them, and they're talking about an expansion. And also ordering, they will buy a piece of big equipment that they use. They are at maximum production. the only way they can make more is to make another space. That's a business that's really been good for the area, and they're good at what they do. The Menards is a question mark for us right now. They own the property, and we know that they gave a year extension on the lease for Astra, who makes the blinds. So they're supposed to start in '24 with the development of that property. But I'm thinking that it's 25. If they gave an extension on that particular piece of ground, that'll be critical, because they plan to keep that building and use it for manufacturing purposes, the bricks and trusses and those sorts of things that they do. I don't believe that they've built any new stores yet, so there is not the demand that they had planned, but hopefully they'll get started with that at this time. Switching to the economics of the downtown area, we have the Chamber of Commerce with Ryan Kuchenbecker and Main Street Ravenna with Harrison Hughes. The two of them are working together. As I said earlier, it's kind of the new normalcy, and we've learned to live with it. I went to a reverse raffle for the Rotary the other night, and it was nice to see a room full of people. I was wishing I had this with me, but I think that it got up and left with that. But they've got an active plan for the summer here, and there'll be a lot of activities. Probably the toughest nut to crack is downtown Ravenna in terms of getting economic development the way we'd like to see it. We're aware that the Phoenix building is for sale, and Kevin Coleman is moved their offices over to their office in Kent. It's my understanding there are some people interested in the building, and we'll have to see what comes of that. I can't thank the two gals that run these organizations enough. They constantly are working to help the people out that do have businesses here. And we have some new ones, the dress shop across the street from us here. And I guess I'm not sure the name of the place now that sells the drinks that you live on, Amy.
Ravenna Nutrition.
Ravenna Nutrition? Okay, they're nutritional. Yeah. That has changed hands, but they are open for business. They just had a ribbon cutting. The other thing that's really nice to see is the theater is fully reopened. And I still think that will make a big difference in any rebound that we get. It's my understanding with the movies that have been out that they have been doing all right with that. Because when you hear other places are closing, it makes you a bit nervous. But this theater, the way it's laid out, is just very pleasant to be in. And then we have the remodeling that's done. We don't have any clients in there yet, but the Oak Rubber plant that was purchased and remodeled, and he is looking for that franchise anchor store to get that off the ground. Let me skip to finance, and I'm not claiming that all of these things I'm telling you about are definitive. There are a lot of other things, and given the time we've got, we had to adjust this a little bit. The general fund, finances, worked with Brian, and the general fund, and these are his words, experienced a year of positive growth. The city's annual income tax revenues again set a new all-time high, finishing at approximately $12 million in 2022. This is an increase of 4% over 2021 and almost an increase of 15% over 2020. We did have a dip when the pandemic started because there was nobody on the streets. We were open every day here. The stuff we do, people have to have. They have to have water. They have to have a wastewater treatment plant. We have to have a street crew with this. And I said we considered them all essential employees. As this was the case in 2019, 2020, 2021, and 2022, the general fund balance increased each year and finished favorably compared to the budget. In 2019, the general fund balance finished with just over $4 million. And at the end of 2022, the balance had increased to over $6.8 million. One of the things that we lost when we were poor was the Moody rating. And you have to have a good rating if you're going to be dealing with bonds. And if it starts with a B, that's not good. That means bad. And that's where we were at. And you can't have one good year and expect them to change it. They want to see a trend. So we weren't able to get that changed until 19. And I think at 19, we got a rating of A3. And last year, in 2022, we had such success that we jumped from an A3 to an A1. The gal that does our bond work says she's never seen anybody get a double jump. So we're very proud of that. We've been proud of the way we manage money. But we try to live at times like we're broke. We get what we need and steer away from stuff that we don't. All said and done, let's see, we finished with, you've heard me, 6 million, 0.8. Besides the general fund, our principal funds, such as our water, sewer, and street maintenance funds, finished in solid shape with revenues out to pacing expenditures in all of them. So we have done well with our water supplies and sewer and even in the street department with that. Probably a guy who deserves a lot of credit for where we're at with this is Mr. Finney. The engineering department's accomplishments are very good with this. The engineering department had another busy year designing and managing nearly $3.7 million of construction projects, of which approximately 42% was grant funded. We completed the following annual project, paving project, marking and striping, and preventative maintenance program. That's crack sealing on the streets. Meridian Street parking lot was improved, and I'm anxious to see it this spring when everything's green. And the Riddle Avenue and South Chestnut Streets were resurfaced, and South Freedom Street we began the repair of the brick road. Rayon Parkway has been near completed. the funding for Main Street, Meridian Street and Murray Avenue for water line replacement was approved in 2022 and will be constructed this year. During 2022, several projects were started and will be completed again in 23. The Pratt Street water line improvement, which most of that is done, Highland Avenue and Cleveland Road traffic replacement, and the Rayen Parkway, Page Street and Scranton Street water line replacement. Working with the consultant, we had our our water system modeled to, this is for the purpose of looking for the new water tank. We're waiting for the results of that to come back. They were looking at the possibility of retooling the one that is out there, or moving to a new one. We do have, we just got a grant a couple of weeks ago for $750,000 towards the water plant. We had set aside $500,000 out of some of the government money to go towards the new tank. We are also trying to get something together to get to Gail Pavlica because she may be able to help us also with some funds towards the water tank. And we'll be working on that this week. We had damage claims that were collected. This is when city property is damaged by car accidents and those sorts of things. And we did take in $46,426 for damages to like hydrants, trees, or whatever with that. This year saw a total valuation of nearly $12.2 million in private commercial construction and nearly $2.1 million in residential construction. There were a combined 641 inspections conducted by our building inspectors, and 549 permits were issued. Contractor registration was 243 with that. What they're looking forward to doing in 23, and the stuff was set up in 22, they're going to looking at $2.8 million in construction, of which nearly 50% will be funded from grants, and let's see, and $1,400,000 from the paving levy. We have a very ambitious program for this summer, and it is, there'll be times you'll wonder how you're going to get to where you're going, I'm afraid, with this, but we're moving forward with this. This is a commitment that we made to the people when they agreed to give us the money for road construction and upkeep with that. 3 projects will be completed this year: Pratt Street improvements, Page Street water line, and Highland Cleveland Road traffic signal. Working with the Parks and Recreation Department, we look for ways to extend the bike and hike trail into downtown and seeking funding, and I'm thinking that we may be able to get that done this summer. We've been talking about it for quite a while, but we should be able to get that done this summer. We have been awarded 2 AMNAT grants to pave North Chestnut Street from Main Street to the northern city limits, and South Prospect Street from Main Street to the south city limits, totaling approximately the cost of $1.4 million, of which grants will pay 80%. AMETS has asked us to move this project up so both streets can be paved in 2023. And we are working on that, and if you stop and think about it, we're going to be working on Main Street also. The west end is going to require some extra work in moving the poles because of the widening that we want to do and the recurbing that needs to be done out there. But if we get the biggest line into town going north and the one going into town from the south, those done, and get Main Street done, it's going to look like a new place here. So we're real anxious. I'm not sure that all the paving for Main Street will be done this year because there has to be work in the preparation for that. But we certainly hope that we can get that underway so that the folks that live in town, you haven't done anything till you pave Main Street. So we're working on that. Here we are. Just by way of information, I combined the plants and streets. I want to remind people that the lake opens at the water plant for fishing at the beginning of April. Remind you that it's closed on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. We have some new people that we're working with there. The interim superintendent is Dan Mounts. When I say new, he's an employee who's being promoted. Of course, Billy is at the wastewater plant, Bill Brigant. And Anthony Ballone is also the person of record at the water plant. Danny is working and thinks he will have his total certification within 3 months. Streets, Jason Lovejoy and his assistant Tyler Drum have already had an impact, the two of these guys working together. Part of the negotiations that we had was to pay people for getting upgrades in their certification. And we're trying to keep people here, and we're trying to be able to promote from within. Finding workers was a real challenge through the past year. Heather has done a pretty good job with this. Mike with the Reynolds, with the utility billing, they run a very efficient operation. The new meters are really a godsend, and that project was finished ahead of time with the company writing a letter to us thanking us for the people that they work with, that they said they'd never worked with people like that where they were able to get things done as quickly as they did. The new meters now, if they see you're using extra water, they're going to call you because you may have a leak that's costing you money. Unfortunately, one of the places that we called, the guy was going to be gone for a week, Mike noticed that his water thing was very high, so he called them, and they went out and looked, and a line had broken, and it would have been gushing water for a week out there, and he has to pay for that. So he saved him a lot of money, but there was, of course, damage that he's going to have from the water that was there. But they can do this at your house. If it looks a little high, they're going to tell you, have a plumber come and check your toilets. They're leaking. Something's leaking with that. Just a few comments on things that are left here. The negotiations went very well this year. We ended up with, in actual cash, about a 9% increase over 3 years with that. But there was expense when we, our goal was to hire and be able to retain people. And to do that, we had to squeeze the steps a little bit so people got to the top faster to help keep them here. And it also helped us find people that wanted to work with that. At the purchase of the old high school, we purchased it for the purpose of building the safety building there in City Hall. We're still in the process of looking at that. We own the property, but we still have to be smart about what we do with the money to build it and where it's going to come from. And we're still in the process of looking at that. I would hate to wait as long as they did to build the high school, because that was about 30 years. But we're going to be actively starting to take a look at this and the feasibility of going ahead with that. And just one last thing by way of information. I took a ride through the cemetery yesterday, actually, to take a look at what was going on with the building for LG Chem. And there were people out working on Sunday on that project. They're bound and determined they're going to open that in September. And we're going to try and stay out of our way and let them. The cemetery, the winter's a poor time to judge things, but I am interested in that we need to do a better job, and I'm not criticizing the folks that are there. Part of this is age, and the chapel that's up there, and we got a lot of trees that are very old up there. But that's our responsibility, and most of you are aware that we're a bit at odds with the township on this. They are at a point where they would like to be out from under it. But it's always been a place for everybody in the county to have access to. So this is just by something that we need to take a look at with that. And I would suggest, if you have time, drive up through there with that. And I'm probably over, right? Okay, I apologize. There is much more to the city of Ravenna and where we're at. The state of the city is one thing. The state of the government is another. This is pretty much the state of the government and how we're doing financially and what's going on in the area. In the state of the city, we have places, we have work to do. We have a meeting this week on the 22nd at NDS with a group of people that work with the homeless, and we are looking for a solution to find a place for these folks. I had, if you look at my office, there's whole bags of clothing in there that came tonight. I had a call from Candy Lucene, and she works at Walmart, and they were getting rid of all this stuff, and it's new. And she tried to get a hold of Anne Marie, but she never called her back. I told her to bring them up here, and we'll find somebody to get them to hand them out. So that is, we've done well, but we got a lot to do. I didn't even mention the comprehensive plan, but I see us getting that in place before the end of the year. I believe it's possible. So thank you for your attention, and this stuff, I hope we can get it put online. Not my notes, you wouldn't get a thing out of that, but the reports that the people have sent in, I would like to have those online. Thank you. Andrew, you ready?